Egman here with another video, and Master Duel has been out for a month, which means we can officially talk about, I guess, the Forbidden and Limited List predictions. I've seen a lot of people start talking about it now that, the game's been out for a while, and I think something that's interesting about, making a change to a physical card game to a digital one is that you have all this extra data as the company who's making it to say, all right, how many people are running these cards, or what decks are doing well. Something that is more of a guess and kind of playtesting issue based on IRL events or stuff like that. We kind of get the idea, but for this you can get like a bunch of data for hundreds of games are going on at every minute kind of thing. And so really going to be interesting to see what actual changes are happening. And we also know that they're doing more of a best of one, their own kind of format for Master Duel. So they want something that's different from like the TCG and the OCG for their ban list and their balancing too. So, that's obviously going to have some hints for what cards are going to be hit based on those, but also I think there's going to be a direction of their own specific ban list and everything else kind of with it. So we're going to just talk about the cards that I think are going to be hit. They're going to be kind of three categories of likely, potential, and then just kind of like a watch list based on my own interactions. In general too, based on playing for this last month, nothing I think is like seems super broken or super busted. So I wouldn't expect a lot of changes, especially if there's not a new kind of change of card pool and they just kind of do a balance based on that. So this also is recorded in February, right after the month, I guess, anniversary of this game being out. So if you're watching in the future, base your expectations on that too. We don't have any official word on when a new list would drop or anything like that, or even when new cards will be dropping. But I just want to kind of put my 2 cents on based on just playing this game and kind of what I've seen and everything else. So we're just going to start off with the kind of likely cards. To set the tone of this list, I'd say that there are a lot of decks that are super viable right now. And in general, I think the game is pretty balanced for what it is. There are some decks that are better, and the only two that I would say are probably like far and above better than the others are probably anything that has like Zodiac and Trident. I think that's a very strong core right now. And then I also say Drytron is probably pretty good. We do have like some contenders of there, like Adamanticators, Eldritch, Prank Kids. I think they're kind of okay, like maybe tier like 1.5, and then we have like a whole like big list of like tier 2 lists. But I'd say once again, Drytron and probably these Zodiac Tri-Brigade kind of stuff. Those decks are kind of the ones that I think need a little bit of adjustments just based on kind of their power and their consistency. But I will say, like, I don't think anything is like terribly overpowered. I don't think there's anything that's tier 0, and I don't think either of those decks are like unbeatable either. But I think Zodiac Trident itself probably needs to go. Being able to kind of like both these cards are banned in both the TCG and OCG right now, and I think for a very good reason. Especially like True King of all calamities, I think this is very easy to get into. Probably too easy for what it is right now, and they can just shut down a lot of decks. So I think both these are probably going to get hit for this, especially like Virtual World is another deck that kind of like goes into True King super duper easily, and then you just feel very bad, like you can't do anything against it, and then like they just have so many ways to take advantage of this card, and it just kind of seems unfair sometimes. So those are my two probably top picks. And then also going over to Eva and Cyber Angel Ben 10. This is kind of interesting, but I think that Drytron specifically needs some kind of debuff in a way. I think Eva and Ben 10 are probably the broken cards for it. Weirdly enough, both of these cards are Cyber Angel Ben 10 is limited to 1 in the TCG, and Eva just got banned this month. Meanwhile, in the OCG, both these cards are unlimited, so I don't know what they're going to choose, but I do say that, both of these have no hard ones per turns. Or sorry, Eva has the hard ones per turn, but it just gets, both these just generate so much value for what they do. I think in my prediction, Ben 10 is probably going to be limited to 1 like it is in the TCG. I think that just makes sense. Being able to get a +1 is good. And honestly, if like this had a hard ones per turn, wouldn't be like a big issue. But since it's so searchable since it's a ritual card and it's a fairy and everything else, it's pretty crazy like how much consistency and how much advantage this card can get. Eva, I don't know. It stinks that it lets you draw 2 and lets you do a lot of good things. It's not terrible. It just feels like if you can get this to resolve, you're probably winning the game, and that kind of feels bad. I don't think both these need to be hit necessarily, but I think that Drytron needs to be hit down a little bit. So I think these are probably the two cards that I target for kind of like their troubles and making the deck a little bit more on the same power level of everything else. And those are really the only cards I'd say that are likely to get hit for this. I'm not asking for like a big ban list in a lot of ways, but I think these are the ones that that seem to me like have a little bit more power than everything else, and like I think people are maybe somewhat abusing for the decks they're doing. Now let's move to the kind of potential cards that I'm thinking about next. To start off, the cards that I think will potentially be hit, we've got Called by the Grave and Crossout Designator. Both these cards are at weird ratios in all three platforms. So in the TCG, we have Called by the Grave at 1, Crossout Designator at 3. In the OCG, we have Called at 2, we have Crossout Designator at 1, and then in the game, we have 2 and 3 respectively. So I don't know how they're going to change these, if at all. It's just these cards are kind of staples in the meta in general, and it's going to be kind of interesting to see what they do for it. I'd say the big thing about it is that it's kind of balanced between two things. One, if you're not having a sideboard, if you're trying to have a best of one format, you won't have access to your sideboard. So because of that, your combo decks will be able to set up, and you can't, put kaijus or some other kind of hate generically from your sideboard without, breaking your main deck. That doesn't exist to you. Additionally, too, Crossout Designator is really interesting as well, because most of the time that I understand this card's used, it's in that side. And so if you're playing against a matchup that you're having a really, really hard time about, you will side in the card that you have trouble with too. So you can use Crossout Designator for real and, be able to have that option for you and kind of go from there. So, in Master Duel, Crossout Designator is pretty much just hate for Maxi and Ash Blossom most of the time, which also is good enough most of the time too. But it's going to, it's not at full power without the chance of a sideboard to help, have more options for this card to hit without having it also in your main deck and everything else. So I think something might happen to these guys. It's going to be unclear. It's going to also depend on how good combo decks are right now too, but I think they are worth considering. Next up, we do have Fire Formation Tenki, Prank Kids Meow Meow Mew, and Imperial Order. Tenki is at 3 in the OCG and the game, but they're only at 1 in the TCG, and I think it can probably get hit down to 1 or 2. We have a lot of decks that are using this right now. It just helps the consistency of the deck as well, just by a lot, and I don't think they need that consistency more of, and just kind of going from 1 to 2 probably makes sense for it. We have Prank Kids Meow Meow Mew, which is limited in both the TCG and the OCG. I don't know if it's going to get, sent to 1 now, but I think it will eventually hit that. A couple decks use it, including Prank Kids and Adaemancipators. It's just a really good card for what it is. I think Adaemancipators are fine with it having it at 1 anyways, but Prank Kids might need that kind of tuned down. It probably won't get hit once again right now, but it will probably in the future. And then Imperial Order, I think is just a tricky thing. It did just get banned in the TCG, but is still at 1 in the OCG. I think this card kind of needs to get banned though for Master Duel, and the reason that is once again with a best of one format, Imperial Order, it can be just unbeatable. Like you can't have a way around it. Like if you have Spiral Traps, especially if it's paired with Skill Drain, which it normally is, it can just be a very tricky card to get around, and you can feel very bad just playing into it, or just not having it out for it a lot of the time. So I don't know if it's going to get hit immediately, but I think this is probably like on my, looking at it and saying, I think this will potentially get banned, especially since it is in the TCG now. And once again, in this best of one, it just feels very hard to out sometimes, just really stinks. Especially if you have Skill Drain, because if this pairs with Skill Drain, most of the time people will have no answers and they can't do anything, which kind of sucks. And then lastly, we have Upstart Garblin and Chicken Game. I think these will probably be hit eventually too. I don't know if it's going to be this next one, but having both these existing at the same time is pretty crazy, especially coming from the TCG where Upstart is at 1 and Chicken Game is at 0, and having both these at full 3 is pretty crazy. So we'll see what we're doing. There are a lot of FTK decks that are using these cards to have that consistency, and a lot of people are complaining about seeing those in ladder. I don't think they're too good, or they abuse the system too much, but I know that it might be more of like a customer satisfaction kind of thing, and I knew those kind of bans exist for other card games. So I think that these are probably going to be on a short list of cards that will potentially be banned, and that's my prediction. I think they're going to get hit eventually, but those are those, and let's go to the kind of final cards I want to talk about today. And to wrap up this video, we do have my watch list cards. Nothing that I necessarily would ask to be banned right now, but they're kind of just, I'm keeping my eye on them, and just kind of, they have the potential. I wouldn't be surprised if any of these cards got hit. but they're not, anything that I'm kind of asking for right now. To kind of start this off, we do have Thunder Dragon Colossus and Union Carrier. Both these cards are banned in the TCG, but they're at 1 and 3, I believe, respectively, for the OCG. Both these kind of are like lockdown cards, which can feel kind of bad, especially like in a best of one format when you don't have a way to, have some sideboard hate against it if your opponent can consistently get them out. But also they're only good going first generically. If your opponent can set up first, you can't. They prevent your opponent from setting up instead of the alternative. So I think Colossus is okay, especially since it doesn't stop Max C. It just stops cards from getting to hand. So it does have Max C being in the meta does change how good it is. And then also Union Carrier. I was kind of afraid this was going to just be abused a lot, but it seems to be okay. The only time I've really faced against it in ladder has been against Drytron, and they just use it for Eva. So if Eva gets hit too, this card is definitely not as good. Obviously, you do have like the Buster Whelp that can prevent your opponent from summoning from the extra deck, so that is something to consider. But I don't know. I think like the only thing about Union Carriers, I feel like like it only exists to be abused, right? And so I don't know if it's good to be in the game for card design reasons, but I'm not asking for. I haven't heard like a bunch of reasons why I don't need the card around, so it's probably fine for where it's at. We also do have Block Dragon and Skill Drain. Block Dragon, I think, is just busted in Adamancipators. I think Adamancipators are okay, but I played a lot of it this last season, and it's what got me to Platinum 1. And if I saw Block Dragon, I felt like I won almost every game. It's just got so much value for you. It set you up. Just the fact that you can summon it from your graveyard as many times as you can is absurd, and it just feels very, very strong for what it is. It is banned in the TCG right now, but it is at 3 in the OCG, so it's going to be interesting to see what they do. But just the fact that you're able to just keep recurring this a lot if your opponent can't interact with it just means you get so much value, can help you set up like a really nasty board. So I think this card, I don't know. I don't know if it's going to get banned or not, especially since I like playing Adamancipator, so I do like using this card in it. I think the deck is probably a little clunky without it, which kind of stinks, but for what it is right now, I think it's fine, but it is definitely on this kind of watch list. And then we also have Skill Drain, which, so hear me out. It's at 3 in both the TCG now as of February and the OCG. And I think it's not like a bad card. And I think the only thing that I would say is that in a best of one format, it is almost, this can just win you the game on the spot, because your opponent will not be running Twin Twisters, or it only has like a copy of Harpies or something like that. So Skill Drain can win you the game, and that kind of feels bad, right? If you're going against a Skill Drain deck in best of 3, you can side in that hate, but most destruction is on monster effects inherently for most decks. And so if you're not running the additional, like, once again, Twisters, Harpies, etc., you can just simply lose to this, and then like you can't do anything about it. So that's something to consider. Maybe this could be limited to like semi-limited to 2. I think that would be not outrageous. I think having Skill Drain and Imperial Order in a best of one format exist at the same time is not great. So I would expect maybe one of these to get hit eventually, but it's not like terribly bad. But I don't know. It just feels bad when you see both of them flip up at the same time. So, and then lastly, to end the list, we can't have a Forbidden List talk without Max C. Am I right? But we got Max C in the grass. That grass looks greener. I think that grass looks greener is probably going to get hit eventually, but I don't know. It seems fine. I've only run it against like 1 or 2 grass decks in like the 200 games I've played, so I don't think it's like meta viable right now. It's probably just gonna maybe see hit, but it's not. I don't know, especially like in a format where, like an online format where it does everything automatically, it helps out the deck a lot more. Because I didn't play with this this card in cardboard, but I would just imagine that having to resolve this card is really obnoxious a lot of the time, and having to ask your opponent how many cards they have and making sure you mill the right number, and like all the triggers that activate at the same time. Having the grass looks that grass looks greener on an online client is just so much easier, and it takes up way less time to do. So I didn't talk about it that much in this video, but I think some cards might be balanced based on how easy they are to kind of rein in based on an online format. Maybe, I don't know, but I think that grass is probably like the one of the cards to consider in that idea. And then we also have Max C. I think this card's fine. Everyone has their own opinion on this. I think it's okay, and it should exist. Right now, it is obviously obnoxious to get hit with it, and then you just kind of have to decide, do I want to end my turn? Do I think I can get around it? Or do I do like a half turn, but still give them enough cards to go off? So I don't know. But I think Max C kind of needs to exist. There are ways around it, of course. And it's going to be interesting to see, you know, what the ratio of, once again, Max C, Crossout Designator, and Call by the Grave, and Ash as well. Like all those kind of just interact with each other kind of thing. But I think right now it's fine. Maybe put it to 2 eventually, but it's at 3 in the OCG and 0 in the TCG, and that's pretty bonkers to me. I don't know why it's such a big, change between the two. But I think like it's asked, enough people have been playing around with it that maybe they'll change their mind on the TCG, and it'd be really interesting to see what their reasoning is if they ever release it. Why they keep Maxi at 3 in the OCG and 0 in the TCG, but. That's going to be it for me. I hope you guys got something from it. I've been really, really enjoying my time playing this game. And I think it's, once again, is pretty well balanced. And I think especially for like the first format for this game to ever see, I think it's a fantastic start. I don't think, once again, any of these decks are tier 0 right now. I think that Zodiac and Drytron probably needs like a little scooch back to where the other decks are, but nothing crazy. And once again, they're not unbeatable. Just sometimes they feel really bad to play against. So anyways, that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what cards I missed and what other cards I should probably include, or which cards shouldn't be on this list. And that'll be it. So thank you guys again, and I'll catch you all next time.
Damn it.